Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to KETIV's Autodesk Virtual Academy. I'm Nigel Mbayak, and unfortunately, I'm not at AU today. Sad life. Anyways, welcome all who are here today. I know it is a week before Thanksgiving, so I just want to do a couple of quick announcements. Next week, there will be no AVA. We might stream a video of some turkey baking, maybe. I don't know. That's up to some of the guys on the IT side. So definitely for all of those who are taking some time off, definitely enjoy your vacations, and we'll see you a couple of weeks in the future here. So as you can see on the screen, today we're going to be going over streamlining data handoff and reducing manual data entry. If you got a chance to watch some of the videos that were sent on the email yesterday, you'll kind of see where we're going with all of this. But just want to let you know that the next couple of weeks are going to be a little bit different. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and get started in here. If you have any questions at any time during the webcast, definitely put them in the chat, and I will be able to either see those as they come in, or a couple of the people in the office are also monitoring questions as well. So shout out to Sukandeep and Eric who are doing that on the back end. So let's move along here. So like I mentioned in that email reminder yesterday, the next few weeks of AVA are going to be a little bit different than normal, right? So for the past 105 sessions or so, we've been giving you consistent training on the tools you use most, generally in the manufacturing space, introducing people to new workflows, and unveiling all the brand new features of each release, right? So when the 2018 products came out, 18.1s came out too, we definitely introduced those as well. Here at KETIV, we feel it's a little bit more important, or not more important, it is just as important to share that bigger picture with you. Not necessarily how to use the software or the workflows between multiple pieces of software, but instead express the impact that that they have on the total business, right? So not just the engineering side, the designers and stuff, but a bigger picture, right? To kind of encompass that whole business impact that some of these tools and workflows do have. We've been looking at things on a more granular level, right? Going straight into product features or product tools, things like, if we went straight into things like frame generator or iLogic, just as features, we've definitely done that. We'll continue to do so. I'm not saying that we're not going to do that. Those things are just as important. But we're definitely going to focus on some of the solutions you can leverage and the rest of your organization can leverage to meet those crucial deadlines and get your products to market on time. So there are a couple of solutions. These are just a few of those, but these are the ones that we're going to be focusing on over the course of the next few weeks. So streamlining data handoff, understanding project responsibilities, storing and reusing data, minimizing repetitive designs, and reduce prototyping cycles are just 5. Today we're going to be focusing on streamlining data handoff. And for those of you asking what videos got sent yesterday, if you didn't get an email yesterday as a reminder with some stuff about today's session and some descriptions and stuff, definitely let us know because sometimes the emails do bounce. Sometimes people's spam filters get caught, or these emails get caught in people's spam filters, and you don't get some of that valuable information from us here at KETIV. That's really necessary. I actually did notice a few yesterday that didn't go through. And I talked to some people about that. So if you didn't get any reminder emails yesterday from me at about noon yesterday, I think, let me know. So let's move on here. So today we're going to be going over streamlining that data handoff. And so let's talk a bit about what that actually means. So design, right, your engineering group, you people who are actually using Inventor or AutoCAD to make these products, it's only really a small part of that entire product life cycle. You've got people like manufacturing, you've got people in purchasing and sales, just to name a couple of them. But it's been traditional common practice that these different business groups tend to stay isolated from one another. And data is oftentimes, quote unquote, thrown over the wall. Meaning that, hey, I'm done with this. I've done all the work that I need to. Let me go ahead and pass it over to the other team and stuff like that. So each group, generally, they use different tools to accomplish their tasks. For example, design teams can use Inventor or AutoCAD. Sometimes they use Fusion 360. While people in analysis, right, those people who are actually analyzing the products might be using ANSYS or another CFD solution, depending on what kind of sim you need. People in manufacturing might be using Mastercam or GibbsCam, things like that. But one thing can be constant among all of those groups. And I stress the word can because it's not necessarily happening. Generally, or I guess in the past, you would need to constantly translate those file types for those cross-platform interoperabilities. It's not as easy as just passing the ball over to a teammate like this guy is in this picture right here. I worked in the past where I need to convert my model to step to be able to pass it to a simulation tool because they couldn't read my native files, or maybe I'd have to export my bill of materials to Excel, or even manually import my bill of materials somewhere, maybe into my ERP system to get to my purchasing department. And that takes time. All these conversions and translations, they're time consuming. And generally when changes are made on one side of the equation, they don't necessarily propagate to the other or even downstream. Say, for example, you finish a project and then you make a change. You have to ensure that change, it could be small and maybe non-impacting, but if it's large and changes the parts that you're maybe purchasing, people need to know about that so you don't accidentally purchase thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of a part that you don't necessarily use in your design. I've seen that happen a couple times. It's not ideal. And so this is why we're talking about what we're talking about today. We want to be able to streamline that handoff between one team to another, or even people in the same team, because we want to be able to save time. You want to maintain that IP in your CAD models, right? So you don't want to necessarily export to dumb files, quote unquote, like steps or IGES, or convert your drawings into PDFs where you don't necessarily see some of that really interesting metadata that you actually need moving forward, unless you actually want to hide that IP from the person you're sending it to. So Autodesk is focused pretty much on delivering what they call the future of making things. And I'm sure a couple of people have heard of that term in the past. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like. This one's a little bit different than ones you've maybe seen in the past. And so what this is what they're calling, quote unquote, the future of making things and the product innovation platform. And they figured, hey, our customers do need an end-to-end, seamlessly connected product development platform. They need to kind of break the boundaries across the various phases of product development, right? So between the people in your conceptual design to the people actually designing, to people making them in the factory, maybe people overseas, and then to the actual consumers themselves. I want to be able to break some of those barriers to maintain all of that information. So let's go ahead and just break this down a bit, right? It looks like there's a lot going on here, but as you can see, there's one thing in the center of this, and I'm gonna put my mouse there just to show that. So you can kind of consider this as quote unquote a Venn diagram, except like with 3 circles instead of 1. And there's one thing that is connecting all of it, or that's the center of all of it, and that's the data. So the data is central to the entirety of the product development process. Everything from the design side to the manufacturing side refers to that data, and any changes that are made to that need to propagate to both teams. So you don't want to be able to throw things over the wall and just blindly forget about them and remain isolated from one another. With some of the solutions I'm going to show today, which some of you already have implemented, and that's awesome. But for the most part, they are available to just about everyone. So that's really important, right? So people with the product design collection, which is what we're going to get into next year, really important. Like I mentioned, today's going to be a little bit different. We're not going to jump into the product itself too much. We might highlight a little bit about the interfaces, but if you want to know about how these particular tools work at any point in this, we have an AVA for just about everything if you want to dive deeper into it. And we're going to be doing some more deep dive AVAs in some of these topics over the next few weeks with some people from Autodesk. So like I said, if you're already using some of these workflows and tools, that's super awesome. You're already ahead of the game in regards to optimizing your workflows and process. And I've seen a lot of people who are in the attendees list who are using a lot of these workflows. I've heard and seen, like with my own eyes, that they do start developing things faster and creating more innovation in less time, staying ahead in the market and being that leader. So let's talk about design, right? That was 1/3 of that pie there. With the product design and manufacturing collection, similarly with the product design suite, you have a lot of these tools. Some of it's going to differ a little bit. With 3D modeling, you've got your Inventor, right? Pretty standard. You've got your AutoCAD, you've got your Fusion. Those are going to remain the same pretty much. Generally, everyone who's on these AVAs is using one of those tools to be able to create their products. Simulation and validation. In the past, I mean, when I've worked in the past too, I haven't been using what is called in-canvas workflows. I've had to export all of my models out to use something like an ANSYS to be able to do some of that FEA simulation or CFD simulation. But with the product design collection, you have what's called Nastran in CAD, and that changed in, I believe, August of this year, where it became included in the product design and manufacturing collection. And what that does is it enables this in-canvas workflow, so you don't actually have to leave Inventor to do your simulation. Traditionally, you've been able to do some simulation in Inventor using some of the Inventor Professional features, but InCAD's really added a ton more. The big one being thermal. That's the one we hear a lot. It's like, oh, I want to do thermal simulations, but I can't do them in Inventor. How do I do that? With InCAD, it's kind of changed the game and enabled that workflow within there. Factory layouts, that's kind of bridging that gap between design and manufacturing. You need to make your products, or at least someone needs to make your products. And you want to be able to optimize the amount of product that you're making. And so what factory design utilities, which is this big F here, these are tools that people in the collection do have and oftentimes aren't using. So factory design utilities, it kind of connects, it doesn't kind of, definitely connects AutoCAD architecture, Inventor, and Navisworks to be able to help visualize your factory layouts and use things like process analysis to find bottlenecks in the process in regards to your manufacturing, kind of eliminate those, to be able to set your factory or facilities up in a way to optimize volume. And then what do we do with that data? That data is the same. Like I said, it's in Canvas, right? So for your factory workflows, your simulation workflows, and even your CAM workflows, which we're going to be going over a little bit later. What do you do with that data? Where is the data? Are the files in the computer? And that's where Vault comes in, right? Having a singular piece of data in the center that is connecting everything is one. Like having that data is one thing, but being able to give access to it is another. And that's where something like Vault and some of the other PDM tools come into play. So let's talk about the in-canvas workflow. And I've kind of emphasized this a little bit in the past for some of the Inventor update AVAs as well. But in addition to the core capabilities of Inventor, things like sheet metal, things like tube and pipe, frame generator, that all work within that Inventor interface, you can connect directly with complementary applications for specific tasks. And a lot of this is overlooked, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to use Inventor for my 3D modeling. And my 2D modeling is going to happen in AutoCAD. They're going to be completely separate. I'm going to do all of my electromechanical or all of my electric stuff in AutoCAD electrical, and they're not really going to connect with one another. Well, having that data separate is one thing. You want to be able to combine all of that. You want to be able to make these multi-product workflows work. And oftentimes I hear people like, oh, I didn't know you could integrate the two. I didn't know you could use some of these workflows. And I think that's like the biggest time saver for a lot of people, is to be able to use some of these workflows to speed up those processes. Even if they're using different tools, all of the data is similar enough where you could integrate them within the tools. So for example, you can create electrical schematics in AutoCAD Electrical and establish that electromechanical link in Inventor for routing and harness design, right? So using that cable harness design in Inventor to kind of integrate some of the electromechanical design that you've done in electrical and bring that into a 3D space in Inventor. 2D to 3D interoperability. And so what that's talking about down there is the ability to use what is called the DWG underlays, which uses any CAD technology in Inventor to bring in your 2D models, maybe some legacy data that you had in AutoCAD in the past, and bring that stuff in and start generating 3D models from it. The really cool thing about that is it remains associative to the original AutoCAD model or the DWG model. So say, for example, for this sheet metal part, if this flange changed in AutoCAD and the sketch changed or your DWG changed, that change would propagate to Inventor. If any of your geometry was tied to that actual DWG, then it updates as well. We have an AVA on that. We actually have an AVA on just about all of this except for the reality capture, which is something I've been working on. And that's really key. So with Recap Pro, we're talking about reality capture here, the top right corner. A lot of people don't know this, but you can import point cloud data into your Autodesk products, right? It's not just for the architecture people. It's not just for the facilities people using Revit and stuff. You can use this for your facilities or for other stuff really. So you can take some of that point cloud data and capture the as-is state of your factory now, and then you can integrate that into Inventor or Navisworks, right, to find that clash detection, to be able to move some stuff around, to be able to figure out, hey, how do I want to optimize this particular facility? I know a lot of customers who've started to use this lately with some really, really cool cameras. And that process is actually really cool. Hopefully I can get one of them to share it with some of us on AVA one of these days. And lastly there in Navisworks, and what Navisworks is, it's a viewer to kind of, you can do walkthroughs, right? And a lot of people's like, oh, can I do a walkthrough of my facility? Can I do like a VR walkthrough of my facility? Some of that stuff is becoming realer now that that these tools are becoming more capable of such things. So Navisworks, you can perform large-scale design reviews, right? You can send this to people who aren't necessarily CAD users, and you can use collision detection to figure out, hey, is this factory layout actually going to work? Are these two things going to collide when my boom arm comes all the way around? Really important. Like I mentioned, we do have AVAs on almost all of this stuff. If you want to dive super deep into one of these topics, it's all available. But in regards to being able to streamline that data handoff in all of these, right? You don't have to translate, it's key, right? You don't have to translate the files over again. You don't have to remake geometry. It all just comes into that workflow and finishes. So what do I do if I got MultiCAD Teams? I hear this a lot, right? So a lot of my customers, I'm sure a lot of people on this call right now are in these MultiCAD environments, right? Where you're using maybe a Creo or you're using SolidWorks. Ooh, scary, SolidWorks. But it's not supposed to be scary. It isn't scary. How do you function with those vendors? How do you get some of that data and consume it into your models? Generally, you'd have to completely get rid of IP, have someone send you a dumb model, like a step file or something. But you don't have to do that anymore. You can consume all of these files in Inventor and maintain a linkage to the original file, right? So it's going to convert the file into something friendlier to use for you, as well as maintain a link to the original. So if the original changes, guess what? Your Inventor file is going to change as well. And that's really, really key so that, hey, when a change happens upstream, what's that going to do to my model? I don't have to reset a bunch of things. I have to do anything in regards to that. And that's using the AnyCAD technology, which is available from Inventor 2016 onwards. Like I mentioned, we've got an AVA on this. I actually did this one. Really cool stuff. And if you have any questions on how any of this workflow works, what the capabilities are, what kind of data you have, what kind of data you might not have when you do some of these conversions, let me know. I generally know all of that. So that takes care of the design side of things in regards to how that workflow functions. So let's look back at the product innovation platform here, and let's look at the make side. So we already worked on this design side. We've already looked at it a little bit. If we have some time at the end of this, I might actually jump into Inventor and show some of those workflows in action. But let's look at the make. So what about the make? For organizations, it's not enough just to come up with new products or new product designs. You also have to worry about making them commercially successful, right? Your product's not successful unless people actually buy it and use it. So to do so, you really just care about how to produce it and the technology you use within the product, but also in the production side of it. So, think about new sustainable materials being used. Sometimes those require different production processes, and those require different technologies. If you want to be able to start using, some 3D printed parts in your process, you really have to think, oh, how am I going to generate that? Can I do that in-house? Am I going to have to outsource some of that data? And how are people downstream going to be able to consume it? So let's use industrial machinery as our example here. So a machine sold to customers provides production capabilities, such as, say, for example, an amount of chocolate bars that need to be produced. The customer needs to develop the process to ensure that these machines support the required quantities and qualities. So in regards in how you do this, right? So you innovate to do this, and that innovation needs to happen to save material or energy, right? So both of those, either one, speed up the process or make the cost of your product go down. Besides this, you also need to figure out how you internally produce those assemblies, right? If you're going to change some of the components or you're going to change the entire model completely, you have to think, it's like, how am I actually going to produce this? Am I going to outsource that? Am I going to use light weighting to improve the performance of particular modules? say I have less rotating mass, so maybe I have an increase in speed, maybe I don't have as much standby time as before, but how do I produce these lightweighted components? How do I design these lightweighted components, and how do I ensure that they're gonna work in my process? Are you going to create these products in-house with do I even have the tools to generate these? These are some of the questions that I get from customers when they're thinking about innovating their existing designs or creating brand new ones in general. At the end, all the aspects do meet when it comes to producing the machine. If the different initiatives aren't in sync, right? So these factory strategies, product, customer orders, and technology, if they're not in sync, the innovation probably won't be commercially successful. Again, data is central in all of this, and it's important to note that the same tool set can be used in the product design as well as in the product manufacturing. With factory utilities, for example, an HSM being available within the product design and manufacturing collection, which almost all of you have. I'm actually looking at the attendee list right now. And if you don't already have it, there is a path to it if you have a suite, or Inventor period too. So let's talk about that real quick. So with the in-canvas workflow, I talked about electromechanical, I talked about simulation, but let's talk about machining a little bit. And so let's talk about HSM. So in Inventor, if you look at this, is a screenshot of Inventor. It looks pretty normal except of all of this, what's going on here. But the interface is pretty much the same. In Inventor, in your ribbon, you're going to see this CAM button if you've installed it, and that's for HSM. And what does HSM stand for? It stands for high-speed machining. It's a CAM technology that was acquired by Autodesk a couple of years ago that fully integrates within Autodesk Inventor and Autodesk Fusion 360. It's only emphasized that it's integrated within Inventor, meaning that the data remains the same. You're using your Inventor IPTs, you're using your Inventor IAMs, it's all the same. You don't have to change products or export and translate files, and that's quote unquote streamlining the process. You don't have to export this to Mastercam, but what's really key here, and I think is not as apparent to a lot of people, is like, oh cool, I can do CAM within my Inventor. But really just think about it. Let's talk about a workflow that a lot of people have. Say for example, Inventor to Mastercam. A lot of my customers are working in that workflow. I have my Inventor model, I'm gonna export it to Mastercam, I'm gonna do all my CAM, I'm gonna create my tool paths, and I'm gonna be able to send it to my CNC machine. 1 week later, or say that process, takes a couple hours. It takes 5 or 6 hours to be able to set up that, and then it takes another 5 hours to machine my parts. A week later, I need to make a change to my design. I need to add a couple fillets here and there. Maybe I need to change a bore diameter of something. How do I do that and make sure that the people downstream have access to those files? I need to make those changes in my Inventor model. I need to re-export those to Mastercam. They need to redo the entire setup within Mastercam. So recreate all those tool paths, spend another 5 hours doing that, and then machine the parts. With HSM, it's a little bit different. And by a little bit different, I mean it's a lot different. You're going to edit this model in Inventor, right? Add your fillets or add your changes to bore diameter and stuff. And when you go straight into the CAM environment, it's going to recognize a change. And you're going to be able to hit that update button, which is up here. And it'll update the toolpath as much as possible, like as smart as it is, which it actually is, like very intelligent, to be able to update those toolpaths to work with the new geometry. As long as the geometry is not like completely different. Say for example, you had a block and then you replace it with like a circle, it might not catch that. But if the geometry is like similar enough and the changes are relatively simple, it'll automatically make those changes for you, saving what could be like 5 hours of work. You don't want to have to redo that all. So we've talked about the design, we've talked about the make, and we've talked about how the data is a little bit central to all of that, but where do those files actually go? And this is something that KETIV really strives to help our customers in, right? Is that data management side. So where does all the data go? Having the correct data is important, but it's just as key to ensure that the right people have access to the right data at the right time. You don't want manufacturing to have your data before that's complete, nor do you want your design to edit components that have already been manufactured. Say, for example, you have parts that are quote unquote locked, but someone goes and edits them. What happens? Could be bad. I've seen dozens, maybe, yeah, probably not hundreds, but dozens of of different data management strategies, ranging from everyone managing their files on their C drive. I've got a group of engineers. Everyone just keeps files on their C drive or their downloads folders. I've seen people shuffle a couple of hard drives around to be able to use assemblies and stuff. Kind of scary. I've seen people email files. That's common. That's really common. Is people just emailing files back and forth, especially when you're working in multi-site environments, emailing those files. And then I have my personal favorite, which is the extensive network folders that take literally forever to transfer data and cause my inventor to run super slowly when I'm working on super big assemblies. I'm sure that probably resonates with a couple of people on this call. You also don't want one person to be like the librarian for it all. You don't want one person to be like, oh, I know where everything is and no one else does. Because if that one person maybe is on vacation, no one's going to be able to find anything. None of these solutions are robust enough. They all have their advantages, but they all have huge glaring weaknesses. Your engineering data is probably the most valuable part of your business, I would assume. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrases, quote unquote, my hard drive crashed, I lost all my data, quote unquote, the files are in the computer, my file links are broken, and where's that file? I've been looking forever. And then someone responds, the files are in the computer, and then I throw it off a balcony. No, that's not how that works. But there are solutions to all of this, and a lot of people on this call are already using Vault or other PDM tools that are just as capable, and it is key to do so. But for those of you who aren't, definitely want to stress the fact that your data is the most important part of your business. You want to be able to keep that as secure as possible. So let's talk about data security. I've seen a couple of times when people have had their entire business's worth of data on a server or a computer, and they lose it and it gets destroyed, similar to like this image is showing right here. Has this ever happened to you? Hopefully not. So that's where things like Vault come in to be able to manage some of that data. So Vault solves a ton of these problems. And people always ask me, what is Vault? I have Vault in my collection. They look at it in their downloads. They're like, what is this? I have it. What do I use it for? And my answer is Vault is a data management tool that ensures that the right people have the right access to the right files at the right time. But in addition to that, it's not that simple, really. We've been talking about streamlining the data transfer process all day and reducing that data entry, right? Those are key to this AVA today. And Vault can be super, super valuable in regards to all of that. Streamlining the data handoffs is pretty self-explanatory with something like Vault. It holds all the files for you, and it gives those project stakeholders access to the files when they need it. But let's focus a little bit on the data entry process. And I think that gets glazed over a lot when people are looking at Vault itself. The most common data entry process I see in manufacturing companies, or at least the conversations that I have with people, is in regards to bill of materials or purchasing. So oftentimes I see people manually export these Excel spreadsheets with their bill of materials data from either like Inventor or from Vault, and then either manually enter them into the ERP systems, or I've heard of cases where people literally hand carry a copy of the bill of materials to purchasing so they can order some of the parts. What happens when that assembly changes? Or what happens when one of those purchased parts changes? I've seen cases where people haven't been notified of this change downstream, and hundreds, if not thousands, of the wrong parts are ordered. And then you figure out you have a problem 6 weeks later, right? Especially with these things with long lead times. These delay you getting to market. You don't meet those deadlines. Don't want to do this. Vault helps manage some of that stuff automatically. If you want to know more about the bill of material stuff in Vault, and then ERP integration, if you want to take it a step further to be able to push this bill of materials to your ERP system so the people in other business divisions have access to your stuff, and it's live, visit our YouTube channel, watch a couple of AVAs on that, or contact us and we can get you in contact with the right people to discuss your options. So that's data in general, right? I have to really glaze over everything. I can't go super deep into any of these topics because being able to streamline that data management process, or not data management, that data handoff process is huge. I could talk about this for like 5 or 6 hours and go into detail on every single one of these solutions, but I can't. So I just want to give everyone an idea of what these solutions can do. And if you want to start diving more into them, definitely let me know. I can have that conversation with you. I don't want to keep everyone on the call for 3 or 4 hours talking about exactly what these solutions can do to the T, dot all the I's, things like that. But what happens if you want to, we've talked about data, and we've talked about generally the engineering process, right? So that's your design, your manufacturing process. But what happens if you want to manage that whole process? You want to go one step higher. You want to go one step higher than all of this and connect your design team and your manufacturing team with other business groups in your organization, not just those two that I've been talking about this whole time. That's where tools like Fusion Lifecycle come into play, or other PLM solutions, right? So what PLM is, it's product lifecycle management. And so Fusion Lifecycle is a PLM tool. You might have heard it before, called PLM 360. That was its old name. They changed it to Fusion Lifecycle about a year ago. For those of you who aren't familiar with that name change. I'm not going to get super deep into Fusion Lifecycle. In 2 weeks, the Understanding Project Responsibilities webcast is going to focus almost entirely on Fusion Lifecycle. We're going to have a couple of people. Eric McSherry from Autodesk is going to help us with that particular webcast itself. But let me highlight a couple of things. First off, Fusion Lifecycle is cloud-based, meaning you only need an internet connection to be able to reach your data and manage the entire process. And what does that mean? It helps you accelerate the product development process across all departments and locations, regardless of where they are. What it does is Fusion Lifecycle automates workflows. It also automates key tasks, and it delivers timely information. It is a super robust tool. It does a lot of stuff. I'm not going to go over all of it today. Obviously, I don't have enough time for that. That's a couple AVAs within itself. So because it's on the cloud, it's a cloud-enabled tool. You literally just need a web browser or even a cell phone or a tablet that has internet access to be able to access the data that you need anytime and anywhere. A lot of people do their change order process in Fusion Lifecycle. Some people do NPI. There are a couple of things that Fusion Lifecycle is really, really good at. And to name a couple of them, so NPI, which is new product introduction or new product innovation, I've heard them being used kind of interchangeably. The change management process, a lot of people are doing that in Vault, but it gets even more robust when you're starting to use something like Fusion Lifecycle to be able to manage that change management. Things like Kappa, things like RMAs, things like that. Fusion Lifecycle can help manage those things. Quality, that's huge, right? You want to be able to get the proper products to your people on time. You don't want to be sending them defective things, and Fusion Lifecycle can help manage that as well. And then lastly, product development. Like I mentioned, it does automate a lot of those workflows and tasks to make sure that, hey, like there's visibility into all of these projects, and we know who the project stakeholders are and who may or may not be holding up that particular process. So here's a really quick chart. There's a couple of here's a few of the workflows enabled and automated by Fusion Lifecycle. I know this chart looks like a lot, but I assure you, your business is probably doing a ton of these already. They might not be formalized, or they might not be called the same things, but they're probably generally all there. When I have this conversation with the customer, it's like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. What's going on there? But you might be doing these. They just might not be formal processes. So Lifecycle itself is super key in optimizing that handoff between those business groups, right? So if you want to optimize the handoff between your engineering group, Vault's probably the solution for you. In addition to that, if you want to be able to extend that data handoff to other groups, right? People in quality, right? Those people in sales. You want to help automate your supplier workflow to be able to get some of your purchase parts on time, some of those long lead time products. You want to be able to order those on time so they're not late, or you don't want to order them too early so they're sitting in your warehouse for 3 weeks before the rest of the assembly is ready to go. It optimizes that handoff between those business groups, and it immensely reduces, if not eliminates, manual data entry, and that's really key. That manual data entry is something that you want to avoid at all costs, right? Because then you're adding another variable, and that's like human error, and that's not something that you really want to introduce, especially if you're producing hundreds of thousands of assemblies. And a lot of those automation, all those workflows can be automated through possible workflow integrations from things like your ERP systems or your data management systems. So for example, we've integrated some ERP systems with Fusion Lifecycle, and conversely, we've integrated some Vault with Fusion Lifecycle. So Vault will automatically push bill of materials information from your engineering once it gets released to Fusion Lifecycle, and then Fusion Lifecycle kind of controls the rest of that product lifecycle after engineering's done with it. So the entire production process to things like change requests that automatically go back to Vault, things like that. Those are automatically, those can be automatically set up through that integration. So I know that was a lot of stuff to go over today. Just want to recap a couple of things. Data is central. And so when I first heard of this being a thing, like, oh, data is central, it's like, oh, what does that really mean? But it really is. Data is the thing that connects all of your groups, right? It's the thing that you're passing over. You're passing your engineering data, you're passing bill of materials data over, you're passing some of metadata from your files, maybe what it's made out of, your materials, who it was drawn by, things like this. You're always passing these files over, and it's what's connecting these multiple teams together. Use the in-canvas workflows. With Inventor, right? You want to be able to use more of it. You already have access to a lot of these tools. You might as well speed up some of your processes by using some of them. So I know lately, a lot of people have been starting to use the factory design utilities to be able to speed up the manufacturing process, specifically for the process analysis. And what that is, like I mentioned earlier, is it helps you determine where the bottlenecks are in regards to your manufacturing process, so you can increase volume, make more stuff in the same amount of time, ultimately make more money. Third bullet point is the right access to the right people at the right time. During the data handoff process, you don't just want to hand it off blindly to people. You don't want to give anyone access to your stuff. You want to be able to control that. And there are tools to do so. Instead of having like a bunch of network drives where anyone can reach, right? Your S drive or your Z drive. I've heard these terms before. It's like, oh, I've got my engineering S drive. You want to be able to give that right access to the right people at the right time. Using Vault, you can apply some of these securities. You can even lock files after they're released and completed, so no one messes with these completed designs on accident. And someone with, say, 30,000 files on their computer doesn't, say, leave the company, for example, and take all of that data with them. I've seen that happen before. It's not something you want to happen to you. And then you can automate the entire product development process with Fusion Lifecycle, and being able to connect your engineering teams, your manufacturing teams with the other business groups, people in quality, people in purchasing. The more you can automate, the faster these processes work. And the more you can automate with things like integration, the less likely you are to run into errors in things like manual data entry. If you don't have to manually bring a bill of materials over or a purchase sheet over to somebody else, the less you have to do that, the less errors you'll see. If these things are automatically live and updating constantly. So that is really key. I know today's AVA has been a little bit different. This one's kind of an introduction to what's going to be going over, what we're going to be going over in the next 6 or so weeks here until the end of the year. Like I mentioned, in 2 weeks, we're going to be going super deep dive into Fusion Lifecycle. That's going to be more traditional in the sense where we're actually going to jump into the tool and kind of go over some of the workflows and its capabilities, as well as still highlight some of the big business impacts it has. We're also going to be going over automation using iLogic to be able to build some of your products faster, build different configurations faster so you can get the market faster. We're going to be going over CFD and Nastran InCAD pretty deeply as well. We're also going to be going into a pretty deep dive into Vault to be able to figure out some other things as well. So this just names a couple of workflows we'll be going over. So with that, I'll leave some time for people to have some questions. Like I mentioned on the reminder email that I sent out yesterday to everybody for AVA, there is a couple of videos linked into there that highlight some of the sessions that we're going to be going over in the next few weeks. And so if you didn't get that, let me know, and I'll be able to get those to you. Essentially, we're using a new tool to be able to push those videos. So I definitely want some feedback on those. I know a lot of people who are watching the AVA right now did watch those, or at least clicked into them. If you watch those videos, definitely give me some feedback. I'd like to improve that process as much as possible. If they're helpful, let me know. If they weren't helpful, also let me know. If you think they were horrible, let me know. Any feedback to me is good feedback. I want to be able to deliver what everyone wants in the future. So I know today's AVA is a little bit different. There are a couple of survey questions in regards to the formatting for today's AVA. Please be as brutally honest as possible. I want to make sure that we get the right content out at the right time. If you guys really just prefer learning certain modules in the tools, let me know, and we can kind of optimize this to the community's wishes. That's really what we're here for here at KETIV, right? We have knowledge. We want to be able to share that knowledge, and it's up to our viewership to be able to help us determine what that is. So definitely share some of that information with us if you can. Let me go ahead and jump into questions. Dun, dun. Question, will you show Autodesk CFD sometime in the future? Yeah, certainly. We're going to be going over CFD in a couple of weeks, actually, with Dave Graves from Autodesk. If you have any particular questions or want to see a certain workflow in CFD itself, Henrik, let me know. And I can, we're still in the process of finalizing exactly what the content's going to look like for that session. So if there's anything you absolutely need to see or want to learn about, definitely let me know. And I can cater some of that session towards maybe that workflow or some of those capabilities in Autodesk CFD. So how do I watch the videos that were sent yesterday? Some of those videos are built into Consensus. Let me see if I can grab those really quick, actually. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and just send those to you separately after this webcast, because I have to log into my account to be able to get some of those demos. But let's see here. So yeah, definitely I urge everyone who's on the webcast right now to fill out that survey afterwards. It is really important for us to be able to cater the next sessions to you, as well as figure out if today's session is something you want to see more of. Do you want to see some manufacturing theory, things that are maybe outside of the product itself? Maybe we can do some hand calcs on FEA if we really want to. I can actually do that for you. Things that aren't necessarily related to the actual in-software workflows, we can totally do stuff like that. So let me know. I think that should be just about it for questions. There's a couple in here that I will contact people with offline, but definitely make sure that if you aren't getting those emails on Wednesdays before every AVA that describes what the next day's AVA is going to be like, let me know. It might be your spam filter cutting it off. It might be an unsubscribe from yourself to that on accident, and we can change that. So with that, I think that's everything for today. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Have a great Thanksgiving next week, and we'll come back with AVA in 2 weeks, where we're going to be going over understanding some of those project responsibilities within Fusion Lifecycle, deep diving into some of the workflows and some of the modules within Fusion Lifecycle for things like that change management process, or maybe that quality process as well. So keep on the lookout for that. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we will see you all soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.